All right, let's talk about a mental model for resilience that was born out of, well, one of the most extreme situations you can possibly imagine. And this isn't just about getting through something tough. No, this is a tool you can use to thrive through pretty much anything. So let's dive right in. Okay, I want you to picture this. The year is 1965. You're Admiral James Stockdale. Your plane gets shot down over North Vietnam. You're hurt, you're captured, and that sound? That's the sound of the beginning of a nightmare. I mean, a truly unimaginable nightmare. And this is the sheer scale of that nightmare. 2,714 days. That's over 7.5 years. 4 of those years spent in solitary confinement. Constant torture. This was not some short-term crisis. This was a seemingly endless, brutal ordeal. So the real question is, how on earth does a person survive that? Now, as the highest-ranking officer there, Stockdale had a unique perspective. He saw who made it and who didn't, and he started to notice this really disturbing pattern emerge, all centered around 2 specific and, as it turns out, surprisingly fatal ways of thinking. So, on one side, you had the pure optimists, the guys who were always saying, "Don't worry, we'll be out by Christmas." But Christmas would come and go. Then Easter, then another Christmas. And on the other side were the grim realists. They looked around at the concrete walls, the passing years, and they just gave up. They saw the facts, sure, but they lost all hope. And here's the crazy part. Both of these paths led to the exact same tragic end. Stockdale's words here are just chilling. It wasn't physical weakness that got the optimists in the end. It was the repeated, soul-crushing disappointment. It turns out that hope, when it's not tied to reality, can actually become toxic. Okay, so if blind optimism doesn't work and total realism doesn't work either, what's left? Well, this is where Stockdale discovered something profound. A third path. A paradoxical one. It meant he had to hold 2 completely opposite ideas in his mind at the exact same time. And this is it. This is the absolute core of the whole thing. It's not about choosing between faith and facts. It's about having the mental discipline to embrace both, fully. You have to believe with every fiber of your being that you will succeed in the end. And at the same time, you have to look the ugly, brutal truth of your current situation right in the eye. Let's just break this down for a second. Look at how this works. In one column, you've got the brutal facts. The torture is going to continue. This will take years. There's no sugarcoating it. But in the other column, you have that unwavering faith. This will not break me. I will see my family again. See? He never let the terrible facts kill his faith, but he also never let his faith make him deny the facts. And listen, this isn't just some incredible story from a prisoner of war camp. Modern science actually backs this whole idea up. Research shows that people who practice this realistic optimism, they have better health, their teams perform way better under stress, and they even have lower turnover from stress. So yeah, the paradox, it actually works. Okay, we've seen just how powerful this paradox can be. So now, let's turn this inward. Let's make it personal. I want you to think about your biggest challenge right now, whether it's at work or in your personal life. The thing that's really keeping you up at night. Let's try to figure out which side of this paradox you might be leaning on a little too heavily. And be honest with yourself here. When you think about that challenge, do you find yourself glossing over the tough stuff with a lot of hopeful statements? Or do you get so bogged down in all the problems that you kind of lose sight of any positive outcome ever being possible? Right, so if you're leaning toward blind optimism, this probably sounds pretty familiar. You're constantly setting these super aggressive deadlines, and then you're genuinely shocked when you miss them. You might tell your team, "Oh, it'll all be fine," instead of actually talking about the real hurdles. Basically, you're avoiding those brutal facts. Now let's flip it around and look at the other side of that coin, because it's just as dangerous to face all the facts, but completely lose your belief that you can and will succeed in the end. And this is what that grim realism looks like. Every single conversation is about what's going wrong. You start saying things like, "Well, it is what it is." You've stared so hard at reality that you've basically squeezed out any hope for a better future. You've lost that essential, unwavering faith. So here's the key. Once you know which way you're leaning, you can start to correct your course. We're going to walk through a really simple, practical method that you can use literally every single day to start building this paradoxical muscle. It's a simple 4-step process.
First, you've got to name your challenge, your own personal Hanoi Hilton, so to speak. Then you're going to really dedicate time to writing out both the brutal facts and your unwavering faith. And finally, and this is crucial, you make it a daily practice.
Let's really focus on step 2 for a moment. This is where you have to be ruthlessly honest. No more pretending. You have to ask yourself these really hard questions. What am I really avoiding here? What's actually way worse than I've been letting on? You have to write it all down without flinching. And then, right after that, you build up the other muscle. Now, this part isn't about the how or the when. It's all about the what. What is that final outcome that you are absolutely 100% committed to? Who are you going to become by getting through this? This is where you anchor your hope. You know, Stockdale wasn't alone in this. This exact pattern shows up all throughout history. Think about it. Churchill told his country he had nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat, all while promising an ultimate victory. Lincoln saw horrific casualties, but never lost faith in the Union. Nelson Mandela was in prison for decades with this absolute belief that apartheid would fall. It really is a timeless mark of great leadership. So, if you only take one single thing away from this explainer today, please let it be this. True resilience is not about making a choice between being a realist or an optimist. It's about the difficult, daily discipline of being both at the same time. And that brings us right to the final question, doesn't it? Because this isn't just some fascinating story, it's a practical tool. You have the framework now. You know how to identify your brutal facts, and you know how to declare your absolute faith in the outcome. So the only question left is, what are you going to do about it today?